I have days with a ton of exams that I get not much out of. Less hygiene exams, some way would be good. Where my day is more dentistry and less exams. My mindset and goals have kind of changed as time has gone on. So there was a time frame where I wanted to just have a bunch of hygiene and kind of pull treatment out of there. Now I want to get to the point where kind of getting into more complex cases and restorative procedures.
All right, let's break this practice down. Collections, 1.35 million. Not bad. Overhead, 57%. For a net income of $600K. 4 days a week. Sounds like a dream setup for most dentists, right? So what's the catch? Today we meet Dr. Steve, a successful dentist on paper, but something just isn't clicking. Is it the stress? The grind of procedures he doesn't enjoy? Or a practice that feels more like a job than a passion? We're gonna find out. Welcome to Dental Practice Rehab, where we fix the pain points of practice ownership. So whether you're looking to increase profitability, reduce stress, or attract the patients who truly value your care, we help you build the practice and life you've always wanted. Let's get to work.
I like dentistry. I like clinical dentistry. It does not bother me at all. There's no stress from it. I enjoy it. The treatment planning and just everything that kind of comes along with it. I'm lucky I have a really good staff. I've had, some long-term people that have been with me for a long, long time. We have a good atmosphere, good practice atmosphere. So I really overall, I'm very happy with my practice, but we're kind of to a point now where we have a strong hygiene program and we've kind of at this point kind of fixed everybody. So I'm getting more and more hygiene checks that yield essentially no treatment, which is, I guess, it's a good thing. It's kind of what you want, but it ends up being a busy day of exams that essentially lead to minimal, if any, treatment at all.
Okay, and was that the case earlier on in your practice, or is it like a steady trend toward that?
Steady trend toward that. So when I associated an office for 3 years. I graduated in 2008, and then in 2011, I bought this practice. The group practice had 3 offices, and I'd been working in this one, and then they sold me this one in 2011. And at the time, it was a Medicaid, DMO, very, very heavy PPO practice that over the past, however many years it's been now, 13 years, I've essentially shifted it to being completely out of network. So when we first started, there was a lot of treatment and hygiene because there was a lot of Medicaid patients. And as we've kind of gone on over time, obviously those Medicaid patients aren't with us anymore, but I've fixed most people's issues. And so now, which is good, but now I'm at the point where because people are so repetitive with coming in, which is good, they don't need any work anymore. And now I have days with a ton of exams that I get not much out of.
Okay, so I want to hear about going from Medicaid and mostly PPO to now completely out-of-network fee-for-service. Most dentists don't pull that off. Most dentists, they buy a Medicaid office and they're kind of stuck with that. So what was your strategy?
Well, with Medicaid, I didn't have a strategy. I just dropped it. There was a period of time, I think this was 2015 or 2016, where the final straw was there was maybe $35,000 of checks that were mailed to me, but with the previous owner's tax ID on it, and so I couldn't cash them. And it took me about 9 months to rectify that with however many faxes and emails. And I go, this is ridiculous. I've spent so much time now to chase this money down because of their mistake, and I was just done. We just dropped it. The DMOs were kind of the same way. We kind of just stopped. We maybe gave a little more of a heads up to the patients about the DMOs, but the Medicaid we just dropped and we were just done. The PPOs we started around the same time, and I started with my smaller companies first, the smaller carriers, and just had conversations with the patients and kind of told them. I tried to do as much research on the front end as possible so I would know generally what their benefits were going to be, as we switched, and try to just give everybody a heads up and talk to everybody, face to face. I've done it kind of both ways. I've sent some letters, and sometimes I haven't sent letters. I honestly think letters are a waste. I think it confuses people more than anything. So I've just tried to have a lot of conversations with people as they come in. So it was a long process. I would start and maybe say, okay, 6 months from now we're going to drop, and try to just inform everybody as much as possible. So when I first started, I did one or two when we first started, and then maybe a year later I did a couple more, and then so I started this process probably 2018. I think is when I first started the first one out of network, and then we just this past year dropped Delta it was kind of our last one. So that's been almost a 6 or 7 year transition.
So how did it feel dropping the last one, Delta, and just being completely out of network?
It's the best. It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, Delta's a different animal. It's been a lot of work on the front desk because of the way that they send checks to patients. So it's that's kind of why I waited a little bit with this, because I knew administratively it was going to be a lot of work at the front end. Every other plan sends us checks, and so it's really, from a patient's aspect, there's nothing different. This one's a little bit harder on the front to deal with, but it's great. I mean, no more write-offs. It's awesome.
Awesome. Were you nervous about that, or how'd it go?
No, honestly, I wasn't. I've done enough. I've dropped so many plans. Again, starting with, when I bought the office, we were in network with like literally every plan, again, including DMOs. So I've done enough of them now that I'm not. I wasn't really nervous with Delta.
Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm excited. Yeah.
A lot of dentists, I think, are a little too nervous about like dropping plans. They don't have the confidence to do it, and they just like fear the empty schedule and loss of reputation. If
you do research and you know your area and you know your market, and you can find out if most people care about the repetitive, right? So if they're ensured that their cleanings are still going to be covered at relatively close to 100%, they're not going to go anywhere. They're really not, because they don't know the difference. Like, if you ask somebody what a crown costs, nobody knows. So if it costs $300 more to them, it's not an issue. The cleanings, the repetitive stuff, I think, is why people end up leaving, because it's a guaranteed twice a year they're going to have to pay out of pocket for a certain amount.
Yeah.
But all of our carriers, for the most part, pay close to 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, amazing. I have to take a moment to appreciate what an absolute masterclass this strategy is. Over the last 13 years, Steve has methodically phased out insurance participation, dropping just 1 or 2 plans a year. No sudden jumps, no panic, just consistent, calculated progress. This is Kaizen in action, the power of gradual, intentional improvement. Steve didn't go from Medicaid heavy to fee-for-service overnight. But today, he's 100% fee-for-service by design, not by chance. This is how great practices are built, one smart decision at a time. For most dentists, reaching 100% fee-for-service is the ultimate goal, a moment to step back, celebrate, and ride off into the sunset. But something tells me Steve isn't hitting cruise control just yet. I have a feeling he's got bigger ambitions brewing. So what's next? Let's see where he's aiming to take his practice from here.
It's funny because at one point I had 3 hygienists for a while too. I did that for about a year and then I stopped. So my mindset and goals have kind of changed as time has gone on. So there was a time frame where I wanted to just have a bunch of hygiene and kind of pull treatment out of there, and I did it for a year, and that was the end of that. I think it was around 2015. And it was a capacity. So we had so many patients that I said, okay, well, I'm just going to hire a hygienist, because that's, how, in my mindset at the time, that's how I'm going to get more patients in the practice and get more treatment from there. And we had enough demand so I did it. And this was probably right when we had just dropped Medicaid, but we were still in network with all the PPOs. And so I think it was about a year or so that I had 3, and it was just like overwhelming in my day to try to do 3 hygiene checks on top of all the dentistry that I'm trying to do too. And so eventually I cut the 3rd hygienist and said, I can't do it anymore. And I think that's when I started, around that time frame is when I started dropping plans too, because it's always been a capacity issue, really. When you're in network with all those patients, it's easy for them to come to you, but then you've got to handle them too, which is a lot. Okay, so when you had 3, did you notice you were getting a lot more case acceptance? Like, did your own schedule like fill up like crazy too? It did, but it wasn't like, it's funny when I go back and look at the numbers from that year, we saw way more patients, and we produced a little bit more, but I didn't make any more money. It like netted out after everything with way more stress and less time, because it was just so much busier. So now I want to get to the point where, I'm kind of getting into more complex cases and, bigger restorative procedures. And I want to learn more about that and kind of get more into those cases, which I know requires getting the patients for those. You can pull them out of hygiene to a point, but there's only so many that are in my practice, obviously. So my ultimate goal would be to have a practice that's more focused on that, or at least has more of a base on that, and not necessarily less hygiene, but less hygiene exams. some way would be good, where my day is more dentistry and less exam.
And this is kind of like almost a standard model. Like what you talk to consultants about is, you add hygiene, you add more hygienists to get more exams, to do more dentistry. You want to do more dentistry, you get more hygiene, and that's like your source of the dentistry, right? But I see this a lot where I guess you're stretched so thin that, the quality of your exams goes down, your ability to actually produce goes down because half your day is exams. Was it a tough thing to drop that once you had 3? Like, were you nervous about that?
No, honestly, not really. It was kind of a blessing in disguise a little bit. The one hygienist she was not the best to begin with, so I was probably going to get rid of her anyway, and then that was just a stepping stone to just let's be done. We're just going to get rid of her, and then we'll just stay with the 2 that we have.
And now moving forward, so you don't need to necessarily cut hygiene, but maybe figure out how you want to do more of this complex dentistry. Tell me about the CE that you've taken for that so far.
So I've done a lot of online stuff, and I'm in the middle of clinical mastery with John Nasty and his group right now. So I've done the first 3 of those. I'm going out in May to do like a live FMR class. So it's May and June. So the prep date's in May and the seat date's in June. So I'm just to kind of watch him do that. It's been great. Their classes are awesome. It's very, very high level. So it's not like, it's very easy to implement. It's not anything that's like overwhelming, especially when you first start from a knowledge standpoint. Obviously I want to learn. I want to go in more in depth now because I think that's a very good starting point, but getting more in depth would be good.
Okay. Yeah. So clinical confidence and skills is obviously step 1, but I see this now. So I'm a prosthodontist, so trained in doing this, but you wouldn't believe how many prosthodontists end up not really using those skills in the real world. We're trained on it extensively, but never told really how to attract the patients that need the work, or then how to present it to the patients in a way so that they're often accepting the work, right? So those are 2 big barriers in place. And I think a lot of general dentists who have a practice already think that once they get the skills, they're just going to have the patients naturally asking for the treatment. So have you thought about that? Like how you're actually going to use these skills more once you really develop them?
Absolutely. So the cases that I've done so far have been long-standing hygiene patients that I have a very great rapport with already and who trust me already. So they were easy to kind of get to accept treatment because they know me, they trust me, right? So, but at some point that well kind of dries up as well. And so if I'm going to start to market and go out and get patients that don't know me or don't know our practice, obviously the way you present to those people is I don't want to say infinitely more important, but it kind of is than your existing patient base because they don't have trust with you, they don't have rapport. So case presentation and just everything from the first phone call on, I think makes a huge difference in those patients.
Your ideal patient who might need this treatment, tell me about them. Like, what are their teeth looking like?
Well, I mean, I guess, it's a variable base, really. It doesn't have to be somebody who's, let's say, 20 veneers. I mean, it could be anybody who's just got 4 missing teeth and a bunch of decay, and even that to me is a good case because it's somebody who knows. Like I had a patient Tuesday who was kind of like that. She's a new patient. She had broken a tooth. She had a bunch of decay. She knows it. She said, "I've got a bunch." She's ready to act now. And those are people who you can book them for half a day or a whole day or however you want to do it, and just fix their whole mouths in 2 sittings. And then I mean that's obviously a highly profitable day, rather than trying to convince a patient in hygiene they need 1 crown because the old amalgam is failing or whatever.
I hope you caught that because this is pivotal. One patient like Steve's, who knows she has problems and is ready to fix them, is worth 20 hygiene patients who just want a cleaning. And yet, so many dentists actively market to the just want a cleaning crowd. Then, they turn around and complain that patients don't value dentistry.
I'm not a smart man.
That's the real problem. Steve's ability to identify and attract his ideal patients is a massive unlock. It's going to help him deliver more impactful treatment while also breaking free from that endless cycle of hygiene-dependent dentistry.
An incident, something happens. Like she was with her friend who's a patient of mine. She broke her tooth, and her friend is like, "What are you doing? Like, you need to go somewhere and get it fixed." And then so she ended up in my office this week.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, imagine if you had like more of those patients, like, and less of your, I'm just in for my cleaning, everything is fine. Probably 90% of your exams are just the cleanings and no chief complaints, right? What if like half of your exams were that instead?
It'd be amazing.
Yeah, and half your exams, the patient at least had something that they were concerned with.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I would be very, very busy. Let's put it that way.
Except almost not busy, because you need to do then less of the non-productive exams in that scenario.
Yeah. And that is my ultimate goal, is to figure out how to handle the patients in hygiene that if you're 35 and you've never had a cavity, do I really need to see you twice a year? Or do I even need to see you once a year? I don't know what the cutoff is. Really, at that point in your life, probably never going to need any treatment. Not saying you don't need your teeth cleaned, but do I need to see you all the time? Getting rid of those exams would save, because those people honestly tend to be some of the chattier patients too, and then you're stuck in there talking to them about their vacations, which is great, but that's, not profitable.
Yeah, I mean, basically you're just hoping maybe they'll refer you somebody, or, like it's not a complete loss, but it's not like the best investment of your time. Have you tried annual exams for those kind of patients?
I have, yeah, and I need to be better about it, about, taking those patients and putting them on like a yearly. I kind of started doing that maybe a couple of years ago. I just need to be better with my hygienists about either them saying it or me saying it to the patient. Hey, we're going to put you on a 12-month instead of a 6-month recall with me. So yeah, and it does help. I mean, it does, because it does take some of the exams out.
Now, have you done any like actual external marketing so far?
Nothing.
Okay. That's pretty cool to me that your practice has been able to grow so well and maintain your growth over time, even though you've dropped the PPOs. Like, is that just a lot of word of mouth from the community? How are most patients finding you?
Word of mouth. I mean, when I ask every new patient how they find us, some will say internet, and so I don't know if that's just Google reviews, but most people are word of mouth. Yeah, so it's a patient, that knows a patient or whatever, and then that's how they end up here. Yeah, I do sponsorships. I'll sponsor sporting events or fundraisers or stuff like that, but to me, that's not really marketing. That's just, you're just sponsoring it because it's the right thing to do. Right. You don't necessarily get patients from that stuff,
Yeah, those, I tend to do it when it's a good patient and I'm just like helping them out, but not expecting much from it.
So all word of mouth. I mean, I'm lucky I have a good location in the city that we're in. It's a suburb, but it's a busy suburb. So, and it's kind of a younger community so people tend to move into this area when they're in their late 20s or 30s. Maybe they buy a house, they have kids. And then, so a lot of the houses are older, 100-plus-year-old houses that are kind of set up in a way where, let's say they end up having 2 or 3 kids. Well, then they end up moving to a suburb that's maybe 10 miles down the road. They still come here because they're close enough. And then a new family comes into that house. So I'm in a good location from a good kind of turnover aspect.
Yeah.
So which helps.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, one thing I have in mind, like if you were to want more of these patients who know they need treatment, one way is to specifically target them with some marketing. And you've got the revenue, the profitability to be able to carve out a marketing budget. As long as it's giving you a really positive ROI, then it can often be worth doing. The way I see it is it's a way to improve that base of patients that you have. Whatever your criteria is for an ideal patient, if you can just get more of those, then you can become more selective overall. Like you can start to bump your fees up slowly. And it just really gives you the power to shape your practice exactly in the way that you want it to go.
Yeah. I'm excited. That's honestly, that's what my other goals this year is, just starting some type of marketing campaign just to do something, because I've never done anything.
A lot of dentists, their first question is, which marketing company should I hire? And they ask around and go on Facebook or Dental Town. And it's really like not the best place to start with your question, because the thing is, like, so many dental marketing companies are similar to each other. They really often go for volume, because that's what most dentists are looking at. Like if they're going to send out postcards or they're going to invest in Google ads, they want to know like how many new patients they get from that.
But the problem ends up being quality, because the way you get the most is really often through discounts, and you just end up with a much lower quality patient.
Yep.
Oftentimes they go for the most common procedure that people want, which is a cleaning. And so you get a discounted cleaning offer, and then your practice ends up getting flooded with exactly what you don't want, which is patients who just want cleanings,
exactly.
right? And are skeptical of any treatment that you may recommend, right? So instead, if you flip that script, you can get the exact opposite, where maybe patients not so interested in a cleaning because they have, just like your recent new patient, you're missing teeth, cosmetic issues, embarrassment, pain, and even just a small handful of those a month can just make a huge difference in your practice.
Yeah.
Because you could replace 100 hygiene exams with 5 new patient exams instead.
Yep. That's what I was just going to say. I would take 4 of those patients a month over 20 hygiene new patients that are just there for cleanings.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Yeah. And then another thing, I guess, once you start getting these types of patients, refining your message with them and the way that you present those types of cases can often help a lot. Because what can often happen is when most of your exams are through hygiene, then they become a bit rushed. It's oftentimes we wait till the end of the appointment. Patients may be looking at their watch, like, I got to get out of here. Hygienist wants the room for the next patient. And when they're coming in with these bigger issues, it's just really not the best environment for that. So kind of really refining your new patient protocols, super important.
Yeah, definitely. What I've done, I'll do that if I have that in hygiene a lot of times, and this is not the most convenient for the patient, but I'll say, let's set up another appointment. Let me have you come back for a consult so we can just go over this, because this stuff is more in depth, which most people are receptive to, but it's still a whole other time that they have to come back then out of their schedule for a whole other appointment, instead of just doing that from the start.
And what percentage of your new patients come in through hygiene right now?
That's a good question. I don't have an exact percentage. I would say it's probably 80, majority.
So new patient calls, and is your staff, they're talking to a new patient, in their mind, are they thinking, okay, let's put them in, let's find when they can get their teeth clean? Is that usually the first part?
No, they'll ask the patient why, what do they have issues? Is there a specific reason you're coming in, or are you just trying to become established? And if they say, obviously, they're just trying to become established, then they go through hygiene. That patient that was here, obviously, on Tuesday called, had a broken tooth, so she was a new patient, and so we put her in my schedule, which is much easier to get people in faster, obviously, that way than through hygiene. We do put new patient blocks in the hygiene schedules every month to try to keep some spots open, but even those get taken up pretty quick. One
thing, a lot of dentists have hygiene capacity issues, right? Where there's more patients who want to get in than you really can provide. Became an issue for us. And so, because I had to actually shrink hygiene because it was taking over too many operatories. And so we didn't have room for actual dentistry. We were just doing starting to turn into a tooth cleaning office instead. So I just said, we're doing 2 ops hygiene max. We need the other 4 for dentistry. And what we ended up doing, we stopped booking patients 6 months out. We just said, call us when you're due.
Every patient.
Now, a lot of patients wanted to schedule, right? Probably 50% of them were like, oh, can I schedule now? And we would let them.
Yeah, sure.
But every time you say that, a certain percentage are going to agree, right? So they're like, okay, we'll call you, which opened up a lot of spots, right, for patients to get in.
Yeah.
And so what we can do is actually serve a larger base of patients with fewer hygiene appointments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're always taught to maximize hygiene over time, get everyone perfectly on schedule, remind them when they're overdue, do everything you can to get as many patients to fill your hygiene schedule as possible. But then in your practice trajectory, you reach a point where hygiene's completely full. You don't want to do that anymore.
No.
Yeah, you need to do the opposite.
Yeah.
Well, here's your chance to try the opposite.
Yes, I will do the opposite.
Most dentists don't think of that. They're like, oh, we always got to keep hygiene. It's just so trained, and it's almost impossible to get staff to think differently about it also, right? Because they're just so, they think that they're doing the best thing by keeping everyone perfectly current on hygiene.
So that's interesting. So you do that across the board for all of your patients. You basically say we're not scheduling you, but then if they give a little pushback or say they want to, you'll allow them to. Yeah. I like that. I may start doing that because the other issue becomes too, what if one of my hygienists is sick and then I've got to cancel a day, or if, maybe try to find a temp if I can, but if I can't, I've got 8 or 9 patients that I have nowhere to put them for 6 months.
It's like see you in 6 months.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or we'll put them on the ASAP list, but then you end up, the front desk ends up working those lists way more than they should, which then takes up their time from doing other more productive things.
Right.
Yeah.
Moral of the story to me is that you can see how labor intensive hygiene is, right? So at least your fee for service, I'm assuming you get enough reimbursement to at least make it somewhat worthwhile. A lot of these PPO offices are literally losing money running this expensive, massively labor intensive operation. And it just makes no sense to me.
It was like when I had 3 hygienists. Like that year that I had it, we saw, I don't even remember how many more patients a month. I made less money that year with more patients coming through the door because of the expense that goes along with hygiene and just, everything that goes along with it. It wasn't profitable.
Now that's some good insight into the value of working smarter, not harder. Now let's switch gears and talk about a major mindset shift, moving away from the hygiene-driven new patient visit and instead making the patient's real dental needs the focus. If you're used to bringing patients in who just want a cleaning, this can feel like a big change. But once you start attracting more of your ideal patients, those who actually want treatment, it makes way more sense to ditch the routine first visit cleaning. Why? Because your time is far better spent presenting real solutions to what's actually bothering them about their teeth, rather than just running them through the hygiene assembly line. When patients come in expecting treatment, your job isn't to convince them, it's to guide them. And that's when dentistry gets a whole lot more rewarding.
Yeah, so we took, even that new patient that was just here on Tuesday, we took records on her. So we did, same thing. We took full mouth and then my full arch series of pictures and some models. I still mount models. I don't know, like stone models on articulators. I mean, I have a scanner, but when we have those patients come in, I mount them because I want to see on an articulator what things look like, just as I go through my learning process of all this stuff. So we did all that stuff on Tuesday. So then when she comes back, we'll have full pictures and everything to kind of present to her.
Good. Okay. So first visit, you're doing records and then working up some treatment options.
Depending on what the patient wants. So I mean, I'll talk to them and kind of feel it out. If they're like, I just want this tooth fixed, and they express no interest in anything else, then I'm not going to waste a bunch of time doing all that stuff when it doesn't seem like they're interested. But this lady that was here on Tuesday was very, again, she knew she had issues. She was ready to fix them. She wanted to fix them. I've found anyway, most of those people are very receptive to, when you say, let me get a bunch of information because it's only going to help me, give you better plans, they're fine with it. But you still get the emergencies that are just a broken tooth. Just take it out and that's the end of it.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, that's really smart to not, you're not going to spend a lot of time working up a full mouth rehab treatment plan for that patient who just wants the tooth removed.
Yeah.
Right. How do you go about figuring that out? What kind of, pretend I'm the patient. What are you going to say to me to find out where I am in that? So
honestly, I kind of just talk to them, try to feel out how they are. If I, do a general look in there and there's a bunch of broken teeth, I might just say, hey, there's other stuff going on. I know you came in for this tooth today, but I'm seeing some other stuff in here. Is it something are you aware of it? Do you want me to kind of give you some options to maybe fix it? Or are you just focused on this one tooth? And then kind of see how they respond to that. I try to just ask questions, ask them, questions about what they're interested in, or again, if they even knew that there was issues up there.
Great. Yeah. So then the patient says, okay, they're aware of the issue. They're interested in fixing some of these other problems. So this lady that's coming back, what's your approach going to be with her now in presenting the options?
Well, so my kind of before I started taking a lot of these classes in the last couple of weeks here, I would have just kind of come up with a plan, maybe 2 plans if I felt like there was 2 plans that were, viable, and brought her in and just kind of went over the 2 plans. What I'll probably do with her is maybe have 3 plans, and one would be maybe not an FMR, but a very fixing literally everything. Maybe a middle plan, and then maybe a lesser plan, and then kind of start like you guys said, walk down the stairs. Start with the top one and kind of walk down. I already kind of know from talking to her that she's not. I kind of know what she's interested in. She kind of expressed she'd be fine with like a removable. She's not looking for anything necessarily that's totally fixed. That's not saying I won't present to her those options, but I kind of feel like she's going to land somewhere in that middle ground, maybe even a little bit below that. But I'll present all those options to her and then see. But in the past, what I probably would have done is, because she expressed interest in the removable, I probably would have just presented that and nothing else.
Yeah, and so you see the power of this, because if you just present the removable option, she's got nothing else to reference that to. She doesn't know if $1,000 is expensive or $8,000, or she has no reference point. What I like to do with these ones, even if I know like they clearly want something moderate budget, happy with removable, I'll still mention to them, many of my patients actually don't want the removable. They want permanent teeth. And so they go for these implants, and fixing everything in a case like yours often can be around $30,000. And it's not that like what some dentists get into trouble with is when they formally present that to the patient. Right? And they're like, okay, here's the treatment plan, go up front. Lady's going to give it to them. They're going to see $30,000. They're going to be shocked that this dentist is like overselling something because they think it's just too much. But if you just say it like, okay, many patients like to do it this way, and this is what it costs, it's no pressure on them to accept it. But you really give them a reference point for what expensive can be.
And you're presenting that. Do you present fees?
Yeah.
I do too. I try to, because I just think it's, because then it's just better. To me, it's always been better than some, whoever.
Because we can pivot, right? Like if we say, and I try, the first thing I say, I usually expect the patient to be shocked by it, right? So I'll say, come up with a $50,000, $30,000 option that is realistic. I'm not making anything up, but if you really wanted to go high end, this is what we could do for you. And some patients don't balk at it. They're like, okay, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And I've done several cases where if I just would have wallet biopsied, I would have presented something much more conservative. The idea is for them to be pretty shocked by that number, like, oh my gosh, that I could never do that. But then you get to become their advocate, and you're like, okay, let's find something that does work for you. And now you're gradually reducing the price. You find, okay, you don't need implants for all these back teeth. You could maybe just do a couple to start with, and you find something a little more conservative that might be $20,000, and that's still too much. And then you talk removable, and that ends up being $8,000, and they're like, oh, that's much more reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. Where if you started with the $8,000, it just sounds expensive, right?
Yeah. So it's a good way to give the patient like a way to be happy with that. Like, hey, I'm really working with you. We're going to find something that we can fit in your budget. And then they feel like they've saved some money by going with this option instead of the other option. It's just a lot easier to justify it that way.
Yeah. I've always kind of presented finances because I just feel like it's a more of a relationship builder almost too, where it's like, a lot of places probably don't have that. The financial person comes in and then just like talks. And I feel like because I'm talking money with them, I just feel like patients almost appreciate it a little bit. This is the sense I get.
I feel like we can really adjust the treatment plan on the fly to customize it to them and what they need, whereas our staff just aren't really equipped to do that. Like they can't really be like, okay, yeah, well, let's just do phase one. We'll do these 3 things to start because those are the most important. Like they really have no idea how to do that. So I always like to set my staff up for success when they're presenting the treatment. So basically the patient and I get to a point where we agree on the treatment and the cost. And then the staff's job is really just to get the signatures, go over the payment options. You pay in full to start, you want to do monthly payment plan, whatever. But we've already got to a point where the patients agreed to which plan they want to do.
Yeah. What do you guys do with monthly payments? Do you have a financing system or do you guys do it in-house?
I do mostly in-house.
Yeah.
That's worked pretty well for us, but we require 30% down. Okay. And then depending on the size of the treatment plan, we have an Excel form that automatically will calculate how many months. Yeah. So it has to be, if it's like $1,000 or less, then 4 months max is the most. We'll go up to 6 if it's like a larger case.
You just have a card on file that you charge every month? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, or just automatic from the bank account.
ACH.
Is even better.
Yeah, that's actually better.
We just started doing the thing where the patient pays the merchant fee for the cards.
You have, yeah.
So it's helped to have less credit card use that way.
The patients are okay with it?
Yeah, so far. We're doing the same thing we did with Hygiene, where we just say, we suggest to every patient they pay the fee. If someone throws a complete fit about it, then we say this time we'll pay the fee for you as a courtesy.
Yeah.
90% are like, yeah, okay, or they pay with a debit card or a check. So it's like it's a pretty easy win with most patients. And then the few that you have to work with, we just work with. So
yeah. See, actually, I haven't. My fees are okay. I mean, I'm right around 2% right now overall. But again, it's 2%. I mean, 2%. If I didn't have to pay that every year, is pretty good.
Yeah, for us, we collect a lot, so it's 6 figures a year in fees. So I mean, it's worth it. With staff, presenting treatment's a whole other thing. Like a lot of times, they feel like we need to really get into nitty gritty with patients about like copays and insurance max, and they end up explaining everything. I've had to really work with them on simplifying. You want to just, our treatment payment form literally has 3 things on it: total cost, expected insurance, and patient costs. That's it. Those are all you need to mention. Yeah,
I don't even know that we deal, my girls are pretty good, really just kind of focusing on what the patient's going to pay. I don't even know that we tell them, maybe obviously on a bigger plan, but if it's, a crown and a filling, I don't even know that we tell them what we're billing. We just say this is going to be your cost when you come back, and just kind of leave it at that. We don't worry about, we're not trying to say it's your copay is this or your deductible. It's you owe us $450 next time, and just leave it at that. To your point, to be simple, because people already don't understand insurance. Why am I trying to confuse them even more with it?
I think the main reason I do it is it's yet another anchor. So it's okay, the cost is really $1,500. Lucky for you, it's only $800 out of pocket, right? So it's just.
I actually like that though. That is good. Maybe I will have them start doing that.
So, yeah, it helps. It kind of goes both ways, because I don't want to get them too dependent on their insurance, where they just think, oh God, my insurance is the best. It helps me so much. I don't like that part about it. But
hearing the total cost is an anchor. You're right.
Yeah, I do that. I had an implant case yesterday, and there's another perfect patient. This is an older guy. He's been with me for years. His teeth are terrible. But he's just trust me. He eats all sorts of candy and sugar, so he's always got problems. And so we're doing 3 implants for him, and he just has no questions. He's just okay, yeah, whatever. Cost doesn't bother him. He does whatever we say. And I did the same thing though. Total cost. Now he does have insurance that's pretty good. So I did kind of mention that. If I itemized all the costs for these implants, it's $25,000 for the 3 implants. But then I kind of went through him the insurance is going to pay for these things, and you do a case fee, and his actual out of pocket ended up being $11,000 instead, and so it just makes it so much easier. It seems relatively cheaper, even though $11,000, it's not cheap or anything.
No, but compared to 25, it is.
Yeah.
You place implants? Yeah. I do not. That's probably the next thing that I need to do.
Yeah, I find the more things like that you're comfortable with, it goes the same way, where that's less hygiene that you need to keep going. In my office, per hygienist, we collect about 1.5 million. And a lot of that is just because we can do some of these more advanced procedures. We're not referring out the implants. And we're attracting a lot of patients that need them and want them, independent of hygiene.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You collect per hygienist, but it's not through hygiene. It's just,
no.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So it just it helps to skew your ratio. You could produce, maybe 3x with even shrinking hygiene, just by focusing on those kind of procedures.
Yeah, that would be fine with me. That would be my dream office would be no hygiene. Obviously, that's probably not feasible.
We still do hygiene, but it's more as a service to the patients, because a lot of patients, they get the treatment and then they want hygiene, right? So we don't want to refer them out for that, but it's not the central funnel for our procedures.
Yeah,
where we expect all of our production to come from those hygiene exams.
Yep. No, I mean, listen, I get a good amount of treatment out of hygiene. I mean, I'm not slow here at the office, but it's a lot of work to get that work out of hygiene versus doing some external marketing and getting a patient who's ready to go and already has all that. One patient that has, if they have even 5 teeth that need to be treated, even just very basic restorative. I mean, I don't know how many hygiene exams I'd have to do to get that, right?
This can be a big aha moment for many dentists. When consultants talk about efficiency, they usually mean drilling faster or shaving minutes off procedures. But what good is doing 100 exams really efficiently if you're mainly talking to patients who don't need treatment? Real efficiency, the kind that actually moves the needle, is about maximizing the value of each exam. Ask yourself, with every exam you do, how much treatment are you actually generating? Are you spending your time with patients who need and want treatment? Or are you stuck listening to stories about the grandkids while trying to convince someone who's only willing to do what insurance covers? The truth is, most dentists could free up a ton of time and stress by focusing their exams on patients who are already open to treatment, patients who don't need a sales pitch, just a clear plan and a path forward. Less time wasted, more high-value cases, and a practice that runs smoother and more profitably. Now that's efficiency.
Yeah. One day, 2 days.
2 days,
worth,
yeah,
maybe?
Exactly. If not, I mean, it depends on the day. I mean, there's days there's not a person in hygiene that needs anything. And I just went around and did 16 exams for nothing, Yeah. It's a fun day. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like relationship building, I guess. Yeah. Best part I can say about my practice has been since I've had to not do hygiene checks, where we brought in an associate who does all that, and it's good for the associate. I mean, the type of dentistry that our associates like to do is very amenable to hygiene, because a lot of those patients, they need a filling, they need maybe a crown, like it's basic dentistry. But being able to just focus on like the patients that need the treatment, do those kind of consults only, and then have the whole day where you can just schedule production and it's not interrupted constantly. It's been makes you a lot happier as a dentist.
Absolutely. Like the Mondays are my day where I only have one hygiene. It's my favorite day because I don't get interrupted, for twice as many hygiene checks. I try to schedule all of my bigger procedures on Monday because of that, because I don't get interrupted as much. And the more I do bigger cases and longer procedures, the harder it gets to do all those. Like I couldn't imagine doing it with 3 hygiene. Like when I was doing 3 hygiene checks, I couldn't imagine having to do 3 hygiene checks every hour, if I was doing a bigger case.
Yeah. It almost make you not even want to propose the bigger case, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, I can't even fit this in.
No. Yeah, exactly. Everything, I have to be done with everything in 20 minutes because then I have to go to another hygiene check. That's not even enjoyable to me,
All right. I think we covered most things. Do you have any other goals for your practice that we haven't touched on yet?
I do want to get a little bit into, like I said, implants at some point. My focus is still to get better at more complex rehabs, getting better at getting a CR record and just all this kind of the intricacies that come with that. I want to get real good at that stuff before I start doing implants, but I do kind of want to get into 3D printing a little bit in the office at some point. I need a new scanner and mill. I mean, that's more of just a technical purchase, not really anything that we'd be getting into, but 3D printing for temporaries, maybe occlusal guards. I have to see if that ends up would be worth it or not.
So 3D printing the temps for these bigger cases is a real nice way to you just totally preview the smile and give the patient exactly a blueprint so that they can then approve that, and then the finals are so easy after that.
Yeah, definitely. And then if they break them, we can just reprint them. I just think there's a lot of advantages to it, and I think from what I know too, it would free up more time because nobody has to be chair side making the temporaries. You can just design them on a computer and then print them, right? Which is it frees up my DA's time too. So
yeah, it's really cool. And then also, if you want to make changes to the smile, you just a few clicks, adjust it, and then print a new one. So yeah. So that's I would like to get into that. That's kind of my goal maybe for this year. Halfway. At some point this year, but no, I mean the big goals this year are marketing and getting better at case acceptance and trying to go out and get some of these types of patients that I want to get on our own instead of just kind of
hoping that they come to us,
Yeah, I love it when like you got this vision and you're gonna like actually put a strategy in place to make it happen, and not just like hope that
it happens. Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. So I'm excited. That's one, obviously the big reason I joined Practice on Fire is for this stuff here. So I'm just pumped. I'm super excited.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're going to get like really in depth on case presentation, marketing, all that stuff. Like a big theme with all of our new members is exactly what we're talking about, like making the practice less dependent on the hygiene exams for all your cases.
I guess one of the other things too that now I'm thinking about it is I want to get more specialized on accountability type things with my staff, where kind of even with my assistants, I have two really, really good assistants. They're both AFDAs. They're very, very good. But they kind of like, my one loves removables, my one loves ortho, and they hate it vice versa. So I want to try to get a little more directed and specialized with them, and more, I guess, accountability, and even maybe at the front desk too, like having a very set accountability for everybody to kind of have, lists and responsibilities versus kind of just, and everybody gets everything done now, but I think it would just be better if everybody had their own kind of set stuff.
Have you looked at the in the course library, Mastering Accountability?
No,
yet?
I haven't, not yet.
All right, that's all about that. It's got where you start is you list out every procedure you do in the dental office. And there's a sample list of that. And then you divide that list into job descriptions.
Okay.
Right. And so each task only has one person that's accountable for it. And then these tasks, then from that, you generate daily and weekly checklists that each staff person has. And so they know there's no job that's like ambiguous, that's like group responsibility. And that's super helpful because like, then if something's not getting done, you can just work with the person to make sure it happens.
Yeah, there's more accountability for it instead of just,
yeah.
I thought she was going to do it. I thought she was going to do it. Yeah. Okay.
And then who's supposed to do it too. So that helps a lot. Like, if it's murky, then you kind of like, oh, well, maybe no one's supposed to do it. And you don't even like know what to do or how to address it.
Yeah. All right. I'll go through and read that because that's another thing that I really want to get. I want to get kind of better at this year.
Yeah. So putting that in place. I mean, the checklists are all there, so you may just have to modify based on your needs. But I found it super helpful.
Yeah. Good.
For getting everyone on board.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
I look forward to working with you and everyone else. I want to see some big progress toward what you'd like to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy. Thank you guys for doing this too. I know I'm sure it's a lot of work on your end, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we find it fun. So yeah.
Wow, so I have to give major props to Steve. Here he is, having achieved the dream for most dentists, having a successful fee-for-service practice. Yet, he's not just resting on his laurels. He's taking a proactive approach to the trend that he's noticing among his hygiene patients, which is that most of them are needing less treatment compared to years in the past. He enjoys clinical dentistry, and he's taking advanced courses to be able to become more proficient at rehabs, but he also knows that just knowing how to do the treatment isn't sufficient, and that he also needs a plan to attract these patients and then guide them to yes. He has big goals for this year to transform his practice from a traditional family-style practice to one that honestly can be a lot more profitable and enjoyable, catering his services to the patients who need the treatment that he most likes to provide. Steve's practice has already reached a level of success that most consultants out there would describe as the pinnacle. And that was a place that many of the original Practice on Fire members found ourselves in 10 years ago. But like Steve, we weren't satisfied to take a victory lap and engage cruise control. Instead, we continued to push boundaries, and like explorers of uncharted lands, we discovered possibilities in dentistry well beyond what can be accomplished in the family dentistry model. Working 2 or 3 days a week? Check. Being a productive dentist that does their favorite dentistry without even having to do hygiene exams? Check. Financial independence in your 40s? These are all very achievable with the right strategy. Thanks for tuning in to our first Practice Rehab episode, and make sure you subscribe and keep up to date on all of our future content. See you later. This episode is brought to you by Practice on Fire, a platform dedicated to helping dentists like you conquer your most frustrating career challenges to unlock the path to a thriving practice. Here's the deal. We're all about sharing tons of actionable content for free. We want you to walk away with strategies that make a real difference in your career. But if you're ready to go deeper, to truly transform your practice and life, then our premium platform is your next step. What's inside? At Practice on Fire, we dive into the essential and often overlooked pillars of a successful dental career: business systems. Build efficiency that frees you up to focus on what matters. Marketing. Attract the right patients, the ones who need and value your care. Case acceptance. Master the art of helping patients say yes with confidence. We've got hours of pre-recorded courses, but here's the game changer: an active community that guides you step by step through implementation. No more spinning your wheels in frustration. Think about it. Many dentists invest over 7 figures in their careers between student loans and practice ownership, but they've never invested in the critical skills that make the difference between struggle and success. Visit practiceonfire.com for free downloads, implementation guides, and details about how to take your career and practice to the next level. Want to take the hot seat? Think your practice could use a makeover? Apply to be a guest on our podcast. We'll give you an honest, no-holds-barred evaluation of your practice. Expect raw feedback, a breakdown of your numbers, and a tailored plan to tackle your bottlenecks. Vulnerability is required. Transformation guaranteed. Apply using the link in the show notes. All right, team, your transformation starts here. Let's light this fire.